Back, everybody. AutoNation is the country's largest auto dealer, and it's releasing its July auto sales right here on Squawk. Here now with the first on CNBC is Mike Jackson. He's the chairman and CEO of AutoNation. And, Mike, this is a new business. This is only the third month you're doing this, but it gives us some really good numbers. So what happened this time around?
Well, I think insight on what's happening at retail is very important to the economy right now, and you don't really get that from the manufacturers. So our retail sales for the month of July were $19,700. So let me put those in context. That's up 6% from last year, which had already included the first phase of cash per clunker. And, Steve, most importantly, that's up 22% sequentially from June. And there was a lot of discussion about June's numbers and that it was the end of the auto recovery. And, you know, I had a different point of view.
Mike, you got to help me out here. I want to get going. But what I saw yesterday in the headlines, I didn't delve into the numbers, was that the auto sales numbers reported yesterday by the manufacturers were soft.
Yeah, well, that was
right?
That was the forecast early in the day before the numbers were released.
Okay.
By the end of the day, when all the numbers were out, the industry selling rate was 11,900,000 annualized rate.
Right?
Yeah, 11.7,
so
something like
above the higher rate off of 11.1 the prior month.
11.1 the prior month and 11.2 the prior year. Now, if you look at us for the drivers, once again, the domestic industry is in full recovery. We were led by Ford and Chevrolet brands, up 15%. Continuing recovery in Florida and California, both those states up almost 15% for us. And, Becky, your favorite statistic?
Trucks.
Our pickup truck sales,
yes,
we think is a leading indicator
of the economy.
We're up 60%
wow.
from a year ago, just to show you how far we've come. Now, a year ago was cash for clunkers. The subsidy was for fuel efficiency. But basically, small business America has an optimistic view about future business and is going out and buying pickup trucks. Now, I agree with David. It's not a roaring recovery, but this concern about a double dip, I don't see it. Concern about a double dip in the auto industry, I don't see it. We have a slow, steady recovery that's underway.
I just want to hear Mr. Sunshine response.
Well, the question I wanted to ask is the following, Mike. When we spoke previously on one of these sets, one of the comments that you made was that job growth is the most important driver for auto sales, or something to that effect. And we're still not seeing a lot of that. So the question is, what's driving this this improvement?
So the recovery in 2010, and I think that's right on the point, from under 10 million to well over 11 million, is purely credit healing. That we had an exaggeration of the downturn last year because I had no credit to speak of for our customers. I had the traffic, but I didn't have the credit. And so it led to a depression-level sales. So this year, credit has healed, and we're simply rising to an annual selling rate of 11.5 million, which is still a depression-level number overall. So to really see the industry get back to recessionary levels and at normal levels, we need jobs, and we need healing in housing, and I think that's 2011 and 2012. But to say that we're going into a double dip, I don't see it, certainly not in the auto industry.
So 1.9 million cars were not sold because people could not get financing.
Could not get financing, could not get credit.
And is this now a new base level,
I'm telling you, Steve, the Lord above could come in last year with a credit score of 800, and we couldn't find a loan for him.
Mike Jackson, the man who would refuse God for a loan.
I couldn't. It's not. I shopped them to 10 banks, and they all said no. We had customers who would prepay the lease in full, and I still couldn't get it financed.
Wow.
I mean, we were shut down a year ago. But Becky, back to pickup trucks. I mean, look at how far we've swung. I remember in the summer of '08 when gas prices spiked. I was the stupidest human being on the earth because I was stocked with trucks. So we worked very hard for 6 months to change over the inventory to fuel efficiency, and I woke up 6 months later, stupid again, because gas prices had come back down, and everybody wanted trucks again. So the industry, into the summer of '09, carried a huge overhang of fuel-efficient inventory. And lo and behold, the government comes with cash for clunkers, which paid people to buy fuel efficiency. We cleared that inventory. Then we've restocked with trucks. And that's what people are buying today.
So
they're migrating back to heavier
vehicles. The government doesn't want people doing that. How do you
Well, then they'd have to tax gas.
Right, which is a plan you've talked about for a long time.
But we all know politically that's impossible. But the consumer's taste in vehicles is totally determined by the price of gas.
If we can afford it, we want the big gas-guzzling vehicles. When we can't afford it, then we say, okay,
If gas
we'll
is
give up
under
on
$3 a gallon, they'll give up 5 miles a gallon in fuel efficiency for a better cup holder. They just don't care. You spike to $4 or $5 a gallon, and they freak out, and they'll trade in an Escalade on a Prius.
Right.
Mike, let's
That's
talk
my
about,
world.
Let's talk about your outlook here. Is 12 million a base for where we are right now, or 11,
No. The base is probably ultimately 15 million. If you look at the demographics and the structural issues in the industry, here's the figure, Steve.
with full employment.
With full employment, not full employment, but recovering employment. The industry, America scraps 14.5 million vehicles a year. So that's
really scraps. That's not a made-up
off the road. Into the
junkyards and
into the
count the cars,
you can 14.5 million going into the junkyard each year, and normally there's household growth in America. So you get to 15.5 million units structurally pretty easy. So one of the things that gives me confidence in my forward forecast is, for once, an industry, rather than pulling sales forward, has millions of deferred purchases sitting on the sidelines, waiting for better credit, waiting for a better economic outlook, and they're going to come to market.
How come Ford yesterday came in with disappointing sales numbers? If you saw 15% growth, how come they didn't see it on a national level?
Everything's year-over-year comparison. So Ford did not go into bankruptcy last year and had already accrued a major surge in brand equity from the American consumer by not taking a government bailout. So Ford's figures held pretty steady.
So it's not some discrepancy with the fleet purchases or anything?
No. I think it's really a year-over-year comparison. Just like the Japanese are down somewhat this year.
Okay.
Well, last year they had the huge benefit from cash for clunkers.
I got to ask you an important question here, because one of the concerns about the economy is the following. We had this huge production run-up that really sustained it. David talked earlier about the inventory rebuild. Concern is nobody's going to be there to buy it. The auto companies kept their plants open during the summer. Did they produce cars that will not be bought? Is there a danger right now of an inventory glut when it comes to the autos?
The biggest thing that happened in the last year, led by the Auto Task Force from the U.S. government, and I hate to say this as a libertarian Republican almost, they did a great job, and they really restructured and transformed the industry. The industry no longer overproduces. We used to get so much inventory pushed on us that we didn't want. So I would say we are actually calling the factories and say, hey, can you run another shift? We need more inventory. So the inventories are, for our industry, in perfect shape. The best I've ever seen them in my 40-year career, in the alignment between what people want to buy and what they're producing.
Wow.
Let me ask a related question. We've tried to estimate this ourselves, and we've been unsuccessful at it. We know in the housing market that there's an overhang of housing. We also know that you got the consumer hooked until the credit crisis on the 3-year lease or the 4-year lease, which is much shorter than the economic life of the car. And so you had a system where every 3 years somebody bought a new car, or a lot of people bought a new car. And the question is, how much excess stock, I realize they wear out, but how much excess inventory in not the marketplace, but amongst the consumers actually exists in terms of cars they don't need?
There's many things to criticize about the auto industry from 05, 06, 07. Two things it did not do, or that it did correctly during that period, it did not lose its underwriting discipline, and it walked away from major lease subsidies to try to rebalance the marketplace, not to distort the marketplace, pushing people into leases that weren't really leasors. So we've gone from leasing 30% down to under 15% years ago. So this whole overstimulated push system has really been wrung out of the system, and I don't see an overhang from past behavior in our industry. We didn't lose our underwriting standards. We took our medicine, cleaned up the inventories. We don't overproduce. And if I look at this recovery, here we are with higher sales, without cash for clunkers, with higher margins and lower subsidies, and higher content per vehicle. Sure. Steve, we're $1,000 higher per vehicle this year than a year ago. So all the signs are of a genuine, healthy recovery. Now, the crash took 2 years. Recovery is going to be 3 or 4 years. In that, I agree with you, David. It's not going to rocket right back.
Thank you so much.
But it's on the way, and it's steady.
Thank you, Mike.
Gotta go, Mike. Thanks
Good
very
seeing you
much.
this morning.
Fantastic. Coming up, stick around. The Challenger Report coming out in less than 3 minutes.